too. So, yeah, without further ado, I'll give it over to our brother Jesse here to listen to us.
Okay, check.
Yeah. Morning.
Wow! I feel good. Like I knew that I would now. I feel nice. Like orange chicken and rice. So nice. Fried rice. And I got you. Yeah! All right.
Are you turning him on?
Yeah, I want to make sure they're awake for
I'm
this.
just winding him up.
This is the most important part. That's why I did that. So listen to these words. For I know the plan I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. That's Jeremiah 29:11. So my name is Jesse Buehler. I'm going to read a little story about my life. Okay. I grew up in East Boise with 5 siblings. We went to Catholic church down the road at St. John's with my parents every week. My parents volunteered in the youth group program, and my parents were really involved. My dad coached our sports teams, worked. My parents had 6 kids. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She's really busy. A lot of us got in trouble at school and getting in fights with each other. And my dad worked nights as a patrol officer in Boise here. And then he also worked weekends on rental houses. And he took us all to work, starting at the age of 12. So taught us to work hard, and my parents did all that hard work so that we would have the best lives imaginable.
Wow.
I graduated from Boise High School. Sorry, Timberline. Wish I went to Boise High. And immediately started at Boise State University after that. So God worked through a couple of local business people. They're the Carly family. And I was awarded the Carly Business Scholarship, so I chose international business. Wanted to travel and learn languages. So my sophomore year, I was able to go study abroad in Guadalajara, Mexico, Jalisco. Land of tequila, mariachis, and like las señoritas bonitas. So after sophomore year, I came back to Boise, and I was like, man, I kind of want to go out again. So I decided to bring my road bike and learn French and go do another year in France, the Northeast, in a region called Nancy-Lorraine. It's kind of the German-French region. And so during my life, I've been very fortunate to be able to travel around Europe and Latin America at a really young age and be able to do a lot of things most young adults don't get to experience in their life. So towards the end of college, I wanted to continue learning foreign languages. I considered doing the military, but I ended up following my brother to San Antonio, Texas, and in my dad's footsteps, and I became a San Antonio police officer. So my police career, in general, I don't want to paint it all as a bad picture, but the academy was a ton of fun. I kind of excelled because, anyways, the academy was a lot of fun. I did a lot of good work, helped a lot of people in difficult situations. But after a few years, it gets kind of rough. So I wanted to become a police officer because I like the idea of continual training and improvement. And my dad was like, man, you're on the radio with your best friend. You got a radio, a police car, you got a bunch of friends, you run around the city, you're not in an office. It's a lot of fun. So he kind of influenced that decision. But, and I'm the type of person who really, really enjoys helping people. So That was my thing. And then on my application, I said, I want a career that's physically and mentally challenging. So once I began working as a police officer in San Antonio, the most difficult thing I realized is there's nothing more difficult than to help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. There's a story, but it's a little longer. So every week I was going to several calls where people were having the worst day of their lives. Having coworkers killed on duty and the amount of trauma I would experience in 1 year on the job was like experiencing like 10 years of pain of what I would consider a normal life. And within the first couple years, you pretty much see everything you can imagine. I mean, there's always more, but a lot happens in the first couple years. So working night shift for years and only seeing the worst in humanity started to change how I viewed the world. During my time working in San Antonio, when I was in my mid-20s, there was a spiritual battle going on inside me. My life was full of sin, but that I could always justify to myself, and thought I was living a normal life based on what society was telling me. And so having multiple girlfriends over the years, and even supporting my girlfriend at the time to have an abortion, I was mentally and spiritually breaking down. So over time, the job had begun chipping away at me. And after about 4 years, I began to not trust anyone, not even some of my coworkers. At that time, I was on bike patrol, downtown bike patrol. So the fear of just being on the job and all the violence I experienced through my job started to turn into anger, and over time, it really began affecting my mental health. And that is a big rabbit hole that's almost worse than my disability. And so eventually I came to the conclusion on bike patrol with all this stuff going on in the news and what I was experiencing, like, that's a lot like what's in the news right now, and I'm doing it pretty regularly myself. And so I eventually came to the conclusion that I was gonna leave the career one of three ways: getting fired, being sent to prison for an accidental use, excessive use of force, or being killed or seriously injured on the job. So it's pretty simple. I decided to resign. And July 2017. I didn't give any notice to my coworkers, but I just went into headquarters and wrote it down. My last day is July 17th, 2017. And so this leads me in, I moved back to Boise. I wanted to be around family and couldn't travel and have the vacation time, so I moved back. So before my injury, I was very athletic. I had one of the fastest 1.5 times on the police department. I ran, biked to work, rode my bike at work on bike patrol, and every day I'd lift weights, do CrossFit. My days off were usually doing, wake up early, do jiu-jitsu, take a break, go wakeboarding out in San Marcos, Texas, go home. Then at like 2 in the morning, I go to the gym and lift all night. So I'm busy all day, and that's kind of how I would manage my stress and that kind of thing. After quitting my job and moving back to Boise, I just started getting back into snowboarding and mountain biking. And I bought a really fancy new mountain bike. And I wanted to get into enduro and downhill racing. And so I was still very angry, missing sleep, and still stressed from working as a police officer. So several months after leaving San Antonio, I was still beyond burnt out, to the point where I didn't want to work. I couldn't see myself working in any job. I just couldn't. I was just toasted. And so I just basically felt lost. And so to try to relax, I just work out a lot. I was just getting back into snowboarding. I was just getting kind of reckless. The last day of the season, I got going 60 miles per hour on my snowboard. And then downhill mountain biking, I was just doing the jumps and the things that enduro, downhill stuff is all about. And so, yeah, I didn't just get into mountain biking and and get injured. I had been doing mountain bike racing in high school and won a mountain bike series, and so I signed up for a race and started practicing. So on June 2018, I was in the bike park in Eagle, and I was covered head to toe. I had a full face helmet, motocross chest gear, knuckle gloves, shin guards, knee pads, mouth guard, everything. And I met some guys out there at the park, and I was just riding all day, and I was talking to them, and some younger guys came up, and this kid who's like 15, he's jumping off a 6-foot platform, and after talking to the guy for about an hour, he's like, hey, let's go over, hit this line of jumps. And I just learned to complete the jump earlier that morning. So I was kind of lucky this happened later when they were there with me. But so I went off the jump, and my rear shock absorbed a little of my weight and then flung me forward, and I went over the bars, and I was about 6 feet up. Naturally, I tried to roll to kind of protect my face. Ended up pinching the back of my helmet, hit my head at about a 45-degree angle, and it caused me to break my neck. And so when I'm laying on the ground, I instantly felt like I was laying there flat with my arms hovering above my body, but I was able to move my head a little bit, and I looked down. My body was crooked off to the side, so I was like, this is not good. And I instantly felt like I couldn't really breathe. So the guy came up to me, they called the EMS, and I just asked my parents, I told him, call my parents and ask them to pray for me. And then my parents showed up and were above me, my dad's like, we're here, Jess. And then the EMS took me in to the paramedic, and next thing you know, I wake up in the ICU. You turn the page again. So I wake up in the ICU, and I'm just there. I have a tube down my throat, a feeding tube in my stomach. I was on a ventilator. I looked like Neo in the Matrix. You remember that? And it's just, nothing worked. The thing that scared me the most was I looked down at my arms. The last job I did finally do was landscaping. Figured planting flowers would be a good way to relax.
Yeah.
I had to quit that job too. And it's really scary to look at your arms. And maybe it was a couple days later, but my arms had wasted away into skin and bone. And that's kind of what made me cry so much. And in the ICU, obviously I couldn't feel much, but it's like emotional suffering. You're like, my life is done here. And so in the ICU, I'm just suffering and at the lowest point of my life. So after leaving my job, I was mentally, and now at that time, physically broken. I was really angry about my life and disgruntled about the world. I had lost hope. Family and friends had flown from all over town or all over the country to visit me, and I was starting to assume that it was because I was going to die. So the doctors and the family didn't know if it was a complete injury or not. So complete means your spinal cord is severed and nothing will work and you won't be able to breathe off a ventilator. Push my glasses up. And so they didn't know, and they asked the doctors, what's going to happen? The doctor's like, well, I don't, he's a quadriplegic. And so they didn't know if I'd be totally paralyzed and have to have a ventilator on the back and have to drive a wheelchair with my mouth and eat through a tube, and it just wasn't looking very good. So as I'm suffering in the hospital bed at St. Alphonsus, they put a crucifix with Jesus on the cross up above the door, and I just could kind of relate to that suffering. And I knew I'd lost hope, and I was like, I'm dying here. But I still had a little faith, and I was like, well, if I die, lived a pretty good life, but I'll still go to heaven despite my sinful nature. So what gave me hope was my family started helping me communicate that they have a printout of a keyboard. And so they start vertically, go down the line, and then left to right. They find the letter, and it's really difficult because you're like, you know, they don't know where the break is. So when you say I, they think it's the next word. It's like, wait, no, go back. It's I, and then the next word. But they started using that to communicate. My family really helped out a lot with that, but usually there'd be like one person in the room at the time. And so I have 3 younger sisters, and the oldest of my younger sisters, she was writing on the message, and I just had to write out I, A-M-M, ready to D. And then she put the pen down and left the room. And I guess she didn't want to give up on me. So the nurse, she came in and wrote the final word. She's like, oh, you don't want to live like this? I was like, no. Well, I couldn't speak, so I was like, no. And then, so I believe God was working through the love of my sister at that time. She refused to give up on me and refused to quit. And due to the severity of the situation, I don't believe I would be alive today if it weren't for my sister and my family in that moment. So this is a miracle. When I'd almost given up, there's a miracle happen. The next day, I was able to move my right big toe. That gave me a lot of hope because I'm thinking, well, if I break my neck, I can move my toe, which is the furthest part from my neck, then maybe other things will come back. It's like, it's got to give you the toe. For you know, it's not like, oh, look, my hand is working. It's like a big toe. And this, I was like, well, maybe I can recover. And at that moment, my mindset totally changed. And that's when I would begin the hardest challenge of my life. My lungs were kind of giving up, caving in, and pneumonia and that kind of thing. So they tried to get this lung coming back. And they started doing procedures to strengthen my lungs and my diaphragm. And so I don't really remember. It's kind of a blur because I wasn't sleeping. But the one procedure, there is one procedure I do remember. It's kind of like waterboarding. So it's the most difficult thing I'd ever done. And there's a lot of my life, I'd done all these things that were really challenging. So this was kind of the final, most difficult challenge. So what the nurses say is the C3, 4, and 5 keep the diaphragm alive. And I had broken the C3 and 4. They're blown out, and there's just a cage connecting the two.
Oh, wow.
The x-ray looks pretty scary. So there's no guarantee that my diaphragm would ever work to control my lungs after that. But the nurses said this breathing therapy, they're gonna try a few seconds at a time. Like, we're gonna try to get you off the ventilator for a few seconds. Then the next day we'll try 5 seconds. Next day, 7 or 8. It just worked up like that really, really slowly. So that's how it would go. We'd go about it. Trying to do that treatment was like torture. And I actually had the thought that if I died from lack of oxygen doing that procedure, I was already in the ICU, they could bring me back. And so the next miracle that was really interesting was on about the 3rd day of doing that treatment, I was able to breathe for I think 40 minutes off the ventilator.
Wow.
That was a huge deal. And I felt like I just accomplished the biggest challenge in my life, and I was extremely happy to be able to live off the ventilator. So then another miracle Now that I was off the ventilator, I was eligible to go travel out of state on a nurse flight to the Shepherd Center.
Yep.
So the Shepherd Center was a charity grant because I didn't have insurance when I fell.
Oh.
And so that's a huge miracle. I asked him on the phone, I'm like, I shouldn't ask this, but how much was the bill? Like $750,000. But don't worry about it. And so at the Shepherd Center, I experienced a lot of great things, and God was working through a lot of different people. So the first night I was in there, CNA's, this guy named Alex was like, hey, we're not supposed to talk about this, but if you believe in God, you could be walking again. And so at the Shepherd Center, I mean, now I realize, thinking about it, they gave me this antidepressant meds. They like gave me no filter. And so my humor just got turned up to 11 while I was there, even though I was driving a wheelchair with a straw and that kind of thing. So I had a physical therapist. His name was Don Archer. And one day we're going in, I'm like, man, my mom is kind of losing it. She doesn't know which room's which, and all those hospital rooms look the same. So remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off? He skipped school and he put the pillows under his mattress.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm like, let's do that. And so I got the pillows under the sheet, and my physical well, the cool thing is down there, they're not uptight like in Idaho. They're like, hold on, I've got a wig we can put on you. And it's like this blonde, long wig, and my hair is like a little, obviously way longer than this, but it wasn't a blonde, long hair, you know. And then I set my cell phone next to it with white noise going to merely make it look like I was sleeping. And I had posters and family pictures. I'm like, my mom's gonna walk in here, see a blonde hair wig, and be like, oh, whoops, I'm in the wrong room. Then go up to the third floor or something. And so that was pretty funny. But that prank went wrong because the sheet was over my face, and a respiratory therapist.
Oh no.
She went in there and she sees the sheet over my face, or the pillow, and she comes in, she's like, Jesse, and these are all like pretty funny black ladies usually. She's like, Jesse, you scared me so much. I went in there, I thought you were dead. And then another time, I was just doing some pranks all the time. I had some sisters visiting, and they're always drinking these little bottles of wine. So another lady, her name was Shantae, I think. I had my sisters in the morning put these little empty plastic wine bottles under my sheet, and the CNA came in at 7. And she opens the sheet, she sees like 4 wine bottles. And I just look at her like, And then she's like, oh, Jesse, you got me again. And that wasn't it. I mean, I had a lot of them. It was fun. And so anyways, if you're going through a really hard time, humor helps a lot. And by the time I left Atlanta, Georgia, after a lot of really hard work, I'm not talking training for a triathlon, I'm talking like you pass out and you're like, it was hard. But they got me able to stand up, and with like, I don't know, 30% of my body weight, I was able to walk with about the help of about 4 or 5 physical therapist aides. They'd lift my legs, and I'm on a conveyor belt. Anyways, it was quite a project, but it helped out. And so yeah, God was working through my family members, the staff at the hospital, at the Shepherd Center, and it's very clear to me that God works through people. And God can use anyone, regardless of their, religious background, if they're atheist, if they're, and regardless of how bad you judge their sin to be, God can use that person to bring you closer to Him. And so since my injury 7 years ago, every single day has been challenging. And a lot of times it felt like I've been losing a battle. So dealing with lifelong depression and anxiety and not being able to work out to manage that at all, like I used to, it's been very difficult. And I've actually had thousands of thoughts of giving up and not wanting to live. And and part of that is depression, insomnia, getting 2 hours of sleep night after night after night after night. It gets old. And then losing your freedom and independence. I used to get a backpack and fly to Peru. Now I'm in my house all winter. It's just been a challenge every day. But the hardest thing about having a disability, is losing your independence and feeling like you're a burden to people and having to ask for help. And patience is the biggest thing. The level of patience you have to have having a disability is something most people can't really process. All right. So about 4 years ago, I'd already started coming to Hill City when I was at Bogus Basin. I was getting pretty frustrated with life. It's probably during COVID. A caregiver I didn't necessarily get along with had accidentally allowed me to fall softly on the ground out there in Morrison at the bodybuilding park where I was practicing walking with a cane. And, I appeared relatively okay on the outside, but I was really starting to feel hopeless again on the inside, even though I was walking and doing a lot more. So as I was there, I was just chatting with people, and a lean, muscular guy walked up. He's about 65 or so. He had a big Punisher skull tattoo on his forearm. He's clean cut, but he's got the Punisher tattoo. It's like, this guy's interesting. And he came up to me and he just started asking me how I was injured, asked what I was into for sports and stuff. And he asked if he could pray for me. And I immediately broke down and just started crying. And he's just, doing the typical, let's get this muscle working again. And so after praying for me, he just told me, dive into prayer. And then he turned and walked off. I'm still crying. And he turns back and he's just like, let me pray for you again. And so he took off on his bike, and I haven't seen him since. His name is Michael, I remember that. And so then the next week at Hill City Church, the pastor had mentioned the life groups. So I saw Jake in the lobby there. Like, hey, I'd like to sign up. So he set me up with the life group during the program called Rooted. And so since joining the life group, I've had stronger faith and better understanding of my role in life while I'm, better understanding my role in life while I'm on earth. And then although every day is challenging and I'm dealing with this spiritual battle to overcome sin, it's preparing me for heaven. So God has worked through many people in my entire life, and miracles happen every single day in our lives. I just think a lot of times we're too busy or distracted to notice those miracles. So now I'm able to walk with a cane, going up and down stairs, and occasionally I even practice walking without a cane. And I've started a lot of new interesting hobbies. I got decent at painting. I go golfing at the driving range with one hand. I even play video games with an adaptive controller using my hand and my right foot. And driving games are the best, so I have a wheel for that. And I've also had significant improvement in my independence to where I can do a lot on my own, including showering, which is kind of the nicest part, because,
Yep.
no explanation needed. So one of the big things that I've learned since my injury is not having a job really takes a lot out of your, you know, your purpose in life, and I'm a worker, so I've had some success. Well, not really. I was a substitute teacher a couple times. I got certified as a medical interpreter. That didn't really work out because I can't drive, and so my friend Marty out there, he gave me a good idea because I was tutoring Spanish. So he said, let's start your own business. So now I teach Spanish and English as a second language and tutoring. So I love teaching because I like to see the success in people learning a second language. And I left my card on the table if anybody's interested.
Oh, sweet.
$35 an hour, and I do over the phone interpreting. You know, you got somebody that's like, hey, this guy showed up at work, doesn't speak English, so I do that as well. And I put down some prayer requests, and apparently prayer works because one of my prayers was already answered. I went about a month after a caregiver of 7 years, quit to become an electrician, and went with help from friends here and there. But I actually need a lot more help, and now I have 3 new awesome caregivers, including Bill over here. And then the next prayer is to grow my own business. You know, I have some other ideas to teach, but you know, the business is kind of my short-term plan, and so I just kind of wanted to say this. It's kind of unrelated, but whether you can visibly see someone's challenges in their life, like my disability, or someone's battle is internal, such as emotional pain or mental health challenges, or a divorce, or they have a sick kid, anything like that, life is a battle for all of us. So whatever you're going through or whatever you come into life, don't give up hope because God is preparing you for something better. Thank you.
Yeah.
How was the time on that?
I don't know, guys. How was the time on that?
Great.
Too
We
long.
okay?
Yeah, it was fun. Can you break my record?
It was great, brother. Appreciate you.